This is the best build that I've seen so far within the league in Path of Exile 2, and basically I was wrong, but not for the reason I thought. So I thought that we were comparing Poison Lightning Spear, which had infinite poisons, against some regular hit-based thing. But this build actually uses Tangletongue, which people kept pitching, and I was really confused why. But the thing is, the spear doesn't actually do what you think that it does. So it says forks critical hits, and I always thought, well, okay, it adds fork, that's, great and everything. But that's actually not what it means. What this actually means is that it rolls your critical strike chance twice. If it rolls successfully the first time, great, you've crit. If it rolls successfully again, it basically doubles your critical damage. Your crit multi gets doubled. That is absolutely insane considering how easy it is to get crit multi on this, and especially because it's a 24 base crit spear. I was able to pivot my character into this really easily because a lot of the scaling on that poison spear is very similar to this. So I just took some advice of, Twitch chat, and let's go over some stuff in detail. I think there's some pretty cool tech I put into this POV. So first things first, I want to talk about the spear that I'm using. So I'm using a 1-socket spear with rage gain on hit. First thing to note, that rune, that crit damage bonus, that's multiplicative with all the other crit damage. So that's not like, the crit multi that you see on the tree. That's increased crit damage bonus. This is 2 crit damage bonus. So I think this is just a clean 12% multiplier, if assuming I'm crit capped, and there's some conditionals that aren't being put into POV. The second thing is that rage gain on hit. So the only other source of rage generation I have usually is this Orb of Storm's Font of Rage. The rage gain on hit, corruption on weapons is global. It's not just for melee like it is on the glove talisman or whatever it's called. So that's really cool. I think that's probably the best option set to go for. I've seen people run like accuracy. There's flat added damage here, also quite strong. In my offhand, I'm using the Sacred Flame. So most people run, like I was using Lycoste before. A lot of people run bucklers. I think this is really good. First of all, it gives you 100 spirit, which is hard to come by, and it basically enables my cast on crit Sniper's Mark, which really smooths out my boss playstyle, and actually makes my mapping way more insane. But I guess footage of that isn't shown right here because this is pre-swap. But it also gives you 2 really big lines. Firstly, the top line, 50% damage gained as extra fire damage. For my build with no extra gained as anywhere else, that's just a clean 52% more damage multiplier. Already crazy. So my offense giving me 50% more damage, 100 spirit. But that bottom line is also actually insane. I'm a tri-elemental build, but I actually only need to worry about 1 type of elemental damage because that bottom line makes it so that enemies resist elemental damage based on just one of their resists. So as long as I just lower 1 resist for them as low as possible, they'll resist my elemental damage based on that. So in my case, I'm going for lightning damage. I also happen to have a lot of lightning damage just in general on my gear and stuff, so I've tended to opt for that. It might not be correct overall to go for these nodes because they're like 1.5s and stuff, but having penetration is really good and the crit chance will be really strong as well. Really crazy thing, it'll probably get more expensive. I'm still using Insignia. I just refuse to drop this at this point because my clear is so good, the damage is so good. I think Tailwind is non-negotiable. And High Desire is just... it's so dumb. Just free acrobatics, honestly, for this is crazy. My gloves, I'm able to switch these out because I don't need Plague Finger anymore. So I'm able to get 3 good offensive mods on prefix. These are actually fairly cheap. I bought these for like 30 chaos. And then suffixes, I just like slammed. Ideally, I would get like Life Leech and maybe consider taking the Life Leech on the Ascendancy because this does come with one, I guess, slight downside, you might call it, of like turning a bit of your mana cost and life cost. I don't think it's actually bad at all, but being able to leech that would be cool. Gloves are pretty flexible though. There's also an alternative setup which you just get a lot of crit chance. Ignore crit multi under Hold Tree and play Malagaros, but I mean, 400 versus 946 times 2? Nah, that's crazy, right? The other option to go for here is Painter Servant. I think it works, I'm not entirely sure. But I think it's possible, assuming, certain things on your flat added damage sources, that you can play Painter Servant with Trinity. That's pretty cool. It's about a 40-something% multiplier to your damage, I think, on average. So that's pretty cool. You can go for that if you want to. But I like to have the gear flexibility here. Boots are still move speed, rarity. I have actually 112 rarity on this character. Amulet, you'll see a lot of people run Beacon of Aziz or something. That's what it's called. That's for the crit pen, right? But because I have this scepter, I don't really care about that. I'm not trying to ignore the resistances. I'm trying to lower them to 0 and just leave them there. So then I get to run this really great amulet. Give me the crit chance, flat ES, which gets scaled up with my tree, attributes, which I actually need a ton of because this is actually really expensive to run this. I think it costs like 138 intelligence, and I'm running the lower level. There's actually a higher level one from T4. I think this comes from like a breach boss. So I have the lower level one with the lower level int requirement, but it's still a ton. And Cast on Crit has a 133 int requirement or something like that, so attributes are crazy. Absolute premium. Great amulets cost me 2 divines. This ring needs to be replaced. It's just like a res ring with flat added. Because flat added on your rings, just like in the last character, will be really, really big to scale your damage. And then this ring I bought for 28 divines. It's pretty much what I spent, like, I don't know, I just been spending currency nonstop, flipping, just flipping like my items into something else. And like, oh, I want to try this thing out, and like, oh, does this work, does it not? But this ring, when I saw it, I was like, okay, I need to save up and actually need to buy this thing. Because it's T8, T8, T9 on the prefixes, which is really good. Especially T9 Lightning is like, I don't know, it's a huge buff. I think it's 20 flat more at the top end. And then other mods are all good. I've cycled for Ingenuity. It's really cheap. I definitely could have gone a +2 Charm and like just better bonuses, but I will only care about one ring, right? So because this ring is the OP one. But Ingenuity will be really good. It'll scale really well. And yeah, and then charms, flasks, and then like on these now I get like crit damage, multi, stuff like that. Let's put the gear setup, or the gem setup rather. So a couple things have changed. Firstly, the infusion setup now is towards exposure. I'm trying to lower the enemy resist, right? Trying to lower the lightning resistances. And I think this does work. I mean, none of it's being calced with this. I think this lightning, I think the pen should work. Anyways. Exposure is really good. It just, you know, reduces the resistances, and it's very easy to shock actually because I do a ton of damage, and I also run conduction just because why not? You know, just want to make sure this is really consistent. But it's also still my utility stuff. I still have blind on here, still have culling, and blind is really good because it enables for my single target blind side on Stormlance. In terms of Stormlance, I've also added in overextend. This makes you more likely to be stunned, but it gives you 30% more crit damage bonus, which is should just be a clean 30% more multiplier for this character. Again, it's a little bit messed up, but... And you'll be like, well, that's a bit of a downside, right? You're riding a Roa already, and you're thinking, oh, okay, like, aren't you gonna get stunned even more? The thing is this, I don't want to get hit. If I get hit, I consider that a mistake. So I try not to do that. On mounts that roll like 300% increased stun, yeah, I might get hit one time from a single white mob and actually get stunned. But on normal maps, that doesn't really happen. I think this is more than worth running. Close combat, blindside, just crazy good support. Perpetual charge is very, very good as well. And then Rising Tempest. Rising Tempest gets triple proc because you'd think I'm only tagging with the lightning skill, but Rising Tempest actually works through triggers as well. An infused weapon actually has all 3 elemental tags, so actually procs Rising Tempest. Super cool. Over here, maybe I'm wrong also. Just everything I'm saying could be a lie. Lightning, Spear, Bullseye, Martial, Longshot, Fork, and Deliberation. I'm using Fork the whole time right now. I could play Gamble Shot. I could also not run Fork and then move my Anoint over and take this, Branching Bolts. And this gives me a chance for +1 chain. In some way, this might be better because chains do target better than forks do. But for now, I'm anointing this thing right now. It's just like extra evasion when you're not getting hit. Just even less chance to get hit. Pretty cool. Reservation-wise, actually before that, there's an Orb Storm, still has Font, still has Chain Inevitable. I just dropped this before bosses, and I also dropped Conductivity before bosses. I just put them both on the ground. Don't have to worry about timing too much. And then when the boss spawns, it's affected by all this stuff, right? Once I get the Greater Jeweler, I want to also put in Heightened Effect here, or whatever it's called, and that'll be quite good. So I'll have this, I'll have Exposure, I'll have a little bit extra Penetration, and that'll be pretty good. I could also put Strip Away, I guess, on my Infusion, but I don't think I'll do that. Still running Ghost Dance. Pretty solid defensively. You don't have a lot of ES recovery otherwise on this particular setup. Again, you'll see a ton of different setups with like this similar archetype. And then I run Wind Dancer, Precision Pin, Arm's Length. I put in Cock Snipers. This has made it really nice. It's just a full 1 button. I run 1 button for clear, 1 button for a single target. It's just amazing for clear because cast on crit, when you overkill mobs by like, you know, 300-400% of their health, it generates a lot of energy, even with like, you know, no quality and whatever. And yeah, the roll amount, Mute, Shield, Loyalty, Elemental Army, you know, solid stuff. The skill tree is what it is. I'm not going to really talk about priority. I think at the point at which you're speccing into this kind of build, you're probably pretty high level. But I would say you really want to have really high crit chance, and attributes are a pain in the ass. So yeah, I mean, let me know. I've seen some pretty crazy builds up to this point. I saw like a Flicker Strike build doing, 6-man Sekima carries. I've seen like Wind Serpent's Fury do some absurd numbers. I've seen Primal do some crazy things. But I think in terms of all-roundedness, and having pretty good single target, like in that 2, and it'll be pushing about 3 million DPS range. As I actually figure out how things work and optimize this, because I've only played with this for about 2 hours, maybe an hour. I think this is so far kind of the front runner for me in this league.